Okay, I'm Cathy Lindsey, and I work under Astrology's Evolutionary Astrology. I'm from Des Moines, Iowa, in the United States, and I'm here to kind of talk about the energies of June, kind of an overview of them. We have we have a full moon, and we have a full moon in Sagittarius, and I have the solstice there, and a new moon in Gemini, and then we have the winter solstice. But we have some really, really strong transits and conjunctions and different configurations going on in this whole month. So I want to talk about some of them also as we look at the different charts. So I think I'll start out about talking about the month for a minute, and yes, the new moon will be the first one for this month, the first main activation. And so, and this is a very powerful month. And we have this new moon in Gemini and the full moon in Sag. And the summer solstice, of course, that's when the sun moves into Cancer. Three major things. Actually, June and July, as I was working on these 2 months and looking at things, for the several months after that, but these are two of the most powerful months of 2019, actually. Very, very powerful. Having a lot to do, of course, with the nodes, the North Node and the South Node. Of course, Pluto, Saturn on the South Node, Mars on the North Node in this chart, and then Mercury moves in. I'll go into those in a little more detail. And actually, it's a cardinal T-square with Eris. And Eris, being very, very prominent, is actually squaring the nodes. And I'll go into that a little bit more too. We have Mars traveling through in this month and actually into July. And it comes in and it joins the North Node. We have the South Node, Pluto, Saturn, and again, all of them being squared by Eris. And very, very causing a lot of the chaos and a lot of the disruptions and a lot of the kind of takedowns and different things that, is really affecting people, affecting their bodies, the energy, also affecting, communication, etc. Not to mention countries and all over the whole world and a lot of unrest and a lot of change and a lot of just angst or anxiety, you might say. With these energies, it's very, very, you can see it in these energies. I'm just going to kind of give you just a little outline of the whole month here, real quick. Then, of course, to add in, when we go into July, I just want to touch on that for a second. We have the two eclipses, and they're extremely active. And actually, the eclipse on the 2nd in Cancer actually lands on the sun of the United States. And so, as if we don't have enough going on in the United States, and it's going on all over the world, I know. But that eclipse actually sits on the sun. And so the eclipse on the 16th sits on the US's Pluto return and activates that. So there's a lot of activity going on. And this month is very, very active. And it's really kind of getting us activated, you might say, prepared for going into the month of July with the eclipses. So, like I said, these are two extremely powerful events and months in this whole year. Then we have Neptune, which stations retrograde at the summer solstice. And then Neptune is also a main player in June as it squares Jupiter and sextile Saturn. And those continue on also. Another thing in my little outline is Mars in Cancer, which comes in and becomes a main player throughout the month as it conjoins the North Node along with Mercury for the month of June. This trio opposing Pluto, Saturn, and the South Node in Capricorn. So I'll go into more detail on that also, but that's going to cause even more friction. It's like these energies are building through the whole month as we go into the month of the eclipses into July. Things are really chaotic and really activating, and the chaos and the kind of anger or angst is really being seen here in the United States, and I know it is other places, England and I mean all over. There's things going on, and this is going to continue, of course, and it will continue through 2019 and into the beginning of 2020. That's just kind of a quick outline. I'll go into some more detail on those. I will talk about the cardinal square. I think I will do I think I'll bring it in when I look at the moons. It's a cardinal T-square with Eris, and it's it can be very, very volatile. Of course, we know that we can meditate, we can manifest, and we can kind of direct the energies to go in a more calm way. That's something that we have the ability to do, even though we do know that there's a reason for all of this energy and the transformation and the changes, etc. Please, if anybody has any questions, feel free to ask. I enjoy answering questions. It kind of helps direct me to what you are wanting to know. We'll start with this new moon. And the new moon, of course, it already happened on the 3rd, but we're still in that energy somewhat as it's beginning to fade out. It was a powerful new moon, the Gemini energy, of course, a lot of chatter. I found it interesting that here in the United States, the president was off talking to all kinds of people over in Europe, and some of that, as we know, was a bit chaotic, and all of his meeting up with the royalty and the Queen, etc., and also made a trip into Ireland during this time, during this moon, this new moon, and without getting political, but there was a lot of kind of chaos and demonstrations and some things not quite said totally in a manner that should be, or with all of the information that needed to be there. So I think there was some little bit of chaotic receptions of his trip to Europe, which makes sense when you look at the chart. And again, here is this this cardinal T-square. And this T-square has to do with Mars in the North Node, Juno's there, and Pluto and Saturn and the South Node completely opposite. Now, we all know that this conjunction of Pluto and Saturn and the South Node is a major conjunction. It's going to be with us for a while. And I did a little research on this, and I went back and like I said, I did some research, and there's in the past 2 millenniums, this conjunction of Saturn and Pluto in Capricorn has only happened 4 times. Which is pretty unusual, but only 4 times in the past 2 millennia has this happened with Saturn and Pluto and the South Node. And so I immediately thought to myself, I mean, this is a major, this is a major thing from the universe, God, Goddess, or whatever, however you connect to the higher powers and the higher energies. But this is major from the universe. It's like the universe is serious here. You know, this is a time period that is extremely unique. And there's a mission, there's a reason. And uh, and so when I think about that, I think, you know, there's a reason that we are here at this particular time during this very, very kind of historic combination of Pluto and Saturn in Capricorn. And, you know, it makes you kind of wonder, like, why did I sign up to come in at this time? Uh, I believe it's because we've been through these kind of shifts before, but this is a major mountain or major hill, you might say, in the whole shift that started in 2010 of trying to get us into humanity that cares about each other and that wants to live together. I mean, you know, insofar as tolerating each other and everyone getting along fairly peacefully and just moving away from somebody if you don't get along with them and get away from all of this chaos and all of this destruction and all this anger and angst and uh, you know, it's like this is what the South Node is saying. The South Node is saying we haven't got any of this right as far as countries, etc., and people individually for centuries. And so there sits the South Node with this Saturn and Pluto. And in this chart, it's in the eighth house of the new moon, excuse me, of the new moon in Gemini, which is about communication. And of course, that's trining in with Pluto, Saturn, and the South Node. And I believe that since these are in Capricorn, that it's emphasizing things that, like I said, that we need to work on and shift in the corporate world and in the government. Now, when you're talking Saturn, you're talking work, you're talking hard work, you're talking mountains to climb kind of work. And of course, Pluto's sitting there transforming, wanting transformation made. And Pluto only cares really about the transformation of your soul or the transformation of humanity and the earth. And Saturn is saying, you know, we got to look at this. We got to do it. We got to release the things that are no longer working. We have to speak what we feel, and we have to make ourselves known and get things changed so that we can move towards where we're going. So, history-wise, I just want to say that in one of these connections where we had Saturn, Pluto, and Capricorn together in the South Node, history-wise, in the year it was I don't know, 500 and some. I didn't write that down, but it was with the Mayans and the Aztecs, in particular the Aztecs in Mexico, and it was the conjunction, and there was a clash of cultures, and we can see that happening in the world right now, and the result was almost complete destruction of the Aztecs, of their culture, of their traditions, and the Mayans were in part of this at one point too. But in particularly the Aztecs and even their civilization almost didn't survive. And this was the indigenous people. This was the you know, not the rich ones and stuff. And so it's kind of opened my eyes a little bit to another meaning of this Pluto Saturn South Node that's running, you know, clear into 2020. And there is a lot about cultures, and some of the bullying comes in, or the tradition of the cultures, and they're not being treated with integrity and respect, and the people aren't being treated with integrity and respect so much, and not quite on the scale of the Aztecs, where their whole civilization almost was destructed, but I mean, not too far off, and you can see it kind of happening here and there. And I wanted to bring this out because, of course, we don't want that to happen. And having this knowledge that this is what has happened in these past cycles, of Pluto Saturn conjunction in Capricorn. It's something to be aware of. Um, this, like I said, was the Aztecs I'm particularly talking about. So, so this being repeated, and the feeling of the lack of respect, and the feeling of the lack of integrity, and all these different things that are happening, and almost gave me chills. And especially to the earth too, because the earth is alive, and the earth is also feeling a lot of this disrespect, and the chaos, etc. Not the destruction of the earth, but I mean, it could be of certain areas of the earth. So this seems to be kind of what's going on now. So it really kind of hit me with like a red flag, because they're part of what people are rising up against, is a lack of integrity, a lack of respect, a lack of traditions that need to be honored. Some traditions, of course, we outgrow, but the traditions that in belief systems. And so it's a different scale nowadays, but you can see the parallel there. With the same aspects going on. It's really kind of an eye-opener. Even the traditions like over tariffs and stuff, and you know, all of a sudden it's in your face. Am I going to have to pay $10 for an avocado? That's here in the United States, and that hasn't happened yet. But I mean, it's opening people's eyes like drastically. This Pluto Saturn conjunction in Capricorn, when you look back in history. So Pluto only cares about, again, the transformation of our souls. That's huge with Pluto. And the transformation of the soul of humanity is kind of what's happening right now. And it's a very, very pivotal time. Of course, when we look over at the North Node, it's in Cancer, and it's like, nurturing. We're family. We should all be kind of taking care of each other. Not enabling, of course, and not overly, but, cautious of everyone. And the person down the street's sick, so maybe, you watch the kids or make chicken noodle soup. That's kind of a way of looking at that Cancer energy. But also just, taking care of humanity and taking care of each other, just means that if you don't agree, you walk away, or agree to not agree, or do something nice for somebody that you don't need to. I mean, all those kind of things we all know about. With Mars coming in there, it's like Mars is like, take action on this. And when we're looking at the new moon like this, it's like, this also goes for countries, and this also goes for states, and the bigger families that way. So that's kind of a little history on that, which I thought was very, very interesting, and also with a powerful message there on that. And like I said, I talked about the T-square. And Eris does come in on that T-square in all of the charts, the new moon and the full moon, etc. So this new moon chart, I'll talk about Eris in a few minutes. This new moon chart, it's in the houses of resources. How we make money, how we put food on the table and a roof over your head, and other people's money. So there's a whole money thing going on here, which you can also see in the economies and all over the world, and mention, like tariffs is part of the money, and that's a big thing going on here in the United States, but all over the world, everybody knows about it. So there's a real emphasis on being able to put food on the table and a roof over your head, and what is that going to look like? Well, the new moon here, it's a big emphasis. And again, the $10 avocados, that I joke about, but you know that is up for passing like right now, and it has been since the president went to Europe, and this is like hanging there for them to vote on at the time of this new moon, which I found very interesting. We do have Neptune coming in on both charts, I believe, both the new moon and the full moon. The aspects are pretty similar in all three charts, a little bit different. But with Neptune at this new moon, it's in the 10th house, and which is how people see humanity at the time, how we see the world and humanity with our own eyes, how we see things kind of happening. And of course, Neptune brings in some fogginess and some, you know, what do I want to say? Any imagination and different things. And of course, it's coming over and it's trining Saturn. Which is kind of good in a way, because Saturn can, of course, ground that a little bit, and then it comes down and trines into the nodes, north node, and Saturn and the south node, sextile. So Neptune is also making itself known throughout the whole month, and so when we look where, okay, so we look at Eris, and Eris is at, let me see here, just a second, 24 degrees Aries. Eris is at 24 degrees Aries and coming right in and squaring the north and the south node and all the conjunctions that are with them. Eris, of course, is a dwarf planet, and I talk about it off and on. But Eris is, her energy is chaos, discord, jealousy, angst, a wild card energy. She started the Trojan War back in mythology. She's always stirring stuff up, and she is squaring Pluto, Saturn in the south node, and squaring Mars in the north node, and Juno, which brings in a commitment. And so that is actually adding to the chaotic and the kind of wild type of energies that is out in the whole world. And everybody's feeling it. I mean, our bodies are feeling it, and the earth is feeling it. The countries and humanity, etc., everyone is feeling that energy, and she's very powerful. She's very powerful, and she was discovered in 2005, and her energy became very prominent about a year and a half out from the elections here in the United States. So about towards the end of 2015, into 2016, her energy became very well known. That's square to the nodes, and remember, I shouldn't say that. I know you guys know that, but square to the nodes are very important. Skip steps. So there's something that in the Eris category that we haven't got quite right. And with this Pluto-Saturn conjunction going back into history, it's a rare one at this particular time, and then having Eris discovered coming in and squaring the nodes, it's like the universe is really serious here. You know, we got to make some changes. South node, we haven't been getting this right. And I'm talking all humanity working together. Well, we haven't been getting it right, and it's like it's time. You know, we've got to make some choices, and we've got to move forward in one way or another. And yeah, the universe is really serious at this particular moment to have this set up and then have Eris squaring. And of course, like I said, she's a dwarf planet, but of course we know that they're just as powerful. You have to look at it dwarf planets as planets, the planet energy. So, when I think of all this, and I think of the history of this conjunction and how it's activating all over the world, and I can see it majorly in the United States because I live here, but it's also in England, and it's in Ireland. I mean, it's all over, and in countries all over. And I'm sure there's some things going on down in Australia and New Zealand area also. We don't always get to hear all of it, but it's major. And meditating, manifesting is extremely important right now. And I think that's why the Neptune is, trining the North Node, sextiling the South Node, of course, sextiling Saturn too, and to kind of help some, just so we don't get lost in the fog or into fantasy or too much optimism from the square of Neptune to Jupiter. That's going on right now also. Any questions on what I've been talking about? Okay. So when we look at this new moon chart, it came in very strongly and accenting a lot of these energies in the sign of Gemini, which is, like we know, of course we know, is communication. And it's in the 12th house, and which is communication, some of it being behind closed doors, some of it not being told, out there for everybody, and kind of keeping some behind closed doors, but also very, very bringing in a lot of the very intuitiveness. So when I also looked, Jupiter is opposing Mercury, kind of why, but it's still opposing Mercury. So given a little more philosophy, kind of opposed to the kind of chatter, putting a little higher, like master knowledge onto the Mercury and Gemini during this time period, also during this new moon. So do we want to look at the full Sagittarius moon? If you have any questions on this one.
Hi, Cathy. It's Tashi.
Hi.
Thanks. That's all very interesting. I'm curious if you give any significance to Mercury being opposite the galactic center with this Jupiter Mercury. I think what you talked about with our president traveling, going to the foreign countries, that shows up there for sure. But what do you think of Mercury on this galactic center for the next 2 weeks?
Okay, well, one thing that kind of caught my eye too when I was doing a little of that historical research, to like the Aztecs, when they were coming in and destroying everything, it's almost, the thought came into my mind that would be like aliens landing on Earth and just taking over everything. So I just had to share that with you because it kind of connected in with what you were saying. I think that's extremely important. We need to not only communicate with and be available to communicate telepathically, also not only with everyone in the world on the Earth, but also galactically. And I know many of us get telepathic messages and all kinds of messages, from other beings, etc. There's always a portal whenever the galactic center is activated. So I think with Mercury on opposing the galactic center and activating it is also extremely important during a Gemini moon, because it's indicating, like, from the universe that there's more than just us down here, and we probably need to start getting along a little better, Cancer North Node, because there's other life forms, there's other communication out there, and that's what I think of when I think of Mercury opposing in Gemini, opposing the galactic center right now. I think it's a very powerful indication from the universe that we need to be broadening our communication skills and not using them to bully and argue and all that kind of stuff, or to degrade people and stuff. That we need to start moving towards a respectful communication, but also telepathically, and honoring the fact that it is galactic. We need to start looking at galactic communication.
Thanks.
Mm-hmm. Okay. When we look at the full moon, of course, the moon is in Sagittarius, and the sun was in Gemini, and Jupiter was sitting there with the moon at the full moon on the 17th, which is very powerful, and actually adds more of that kind of mastership knowledge and that ability to communicate. I believe communicate telepathically is there also. When I think of Jupiter and I think of Sag, with Jupiter in Sag, it's amplified even more. It's the master teachers, and it's the masters, those that have knowledge beyond, and also the spiritual masters, and religions and philosophies. And so I believe that the ability, when you bring Jupiter in and connect it in with this full moon in Sagittarius like this, and how it, of course, opposing the Gemini sun, that it can activate some of that knowledge. It can activate some knowledge we have in our DNA that that's still coming up, some of that mastership knowledge, but also in the international and galactical. It's not right on the galactic center, but the ability to communicate as a master it is there, and I think that Jupiter really will add a lot to the full moon. We still have, again, we have the cardinal T-square going on with Eris and Aries, but at the full moon we have Mars that has come right up and sitting with Mercury at the North Node. Another indication of we need to take action on communicating Mercury. And there's a lot of concentration on communicating with these two moons. And but with Mars, it's like we need to take the action. We need to start moving. And this is true, again, when we think about telepathy. I believe that we should already be doing a lot more telepathy than we are as a race. I think we're lagging behind a little bit. I think we should be up doing more of the telepathy, communicating. And the Mars also can mean there could be, a lot of arguments, and there could be a lot of angst, and it could even get a little volatile. Mars, of course, is opposing Saturn, but also opposing Pluto. And so you've got a whole lot of really strong energy there with Pluto opposing Mars on the nodes, along with Saturn on the south node and Mercury on the north node. That is a lot of energy, and it's a lot of energy that could get volatile even. Being aware of that, of course, helps everybody, and they kind of stay out of that and try to stay into the nurturing energies and the intuitive energies of Cancer. The Cancer energy can kind of calm down Mars a little bit, but the fact that it's opposing Pluto, it might make it a little harder than normally. Mars in Cancer isn't that argumentative, etc. But the fact that it's opposing Saturn and Pluto, it could be. And Mercury's right there, so what you say and what's being said, etc., it will become very important. And look for this also throughout the governments of the world, and also corporate America and corporate England. I mean, there's a corporate arena in all the countries, and that's also affected with the Capricorn energy. So how are these corporations, working, and are they working for us, and are they not working for us, and what needs to be said, and what action needs to be taken, and what transformation needs to happen is all in these two new moon, full moon, and the solstice. And of course, and we have Eris, causing a little chaos in there. So these two moons are very, very important, and every month the new moon, full moon is, and the reason I see them as being more than just, oh, it's a full moon, everybody's going to get crazy, or it's a new moon, everybody's going to be meditating. That's true. But these moons are bringing the energy more noticeably into people. People can feel, especially the full moon, they can feel the full moon energy. And they know it's a full moon, and people have more energy, and like they always say, the crazies come out, more babies are being born, etc. But that full moon carries all these other energies. It carries this Pluto Saturn South Node conjunction. It carries North Node Mercury and Mars conjunction, and the Jupiter with them. It carries all this other energy, and so people are more attuned at that time. They're feeling it more at that time. So every time there's a new moon or full moon, people are feeling the energies of the transits at that particular time stronger than when the new moon or full moon is accenting the energy. So I think they're extremely important for people to try to understand and to see. Gemini ascendant, this full moon, Mars in Gemini, excuse me, Venus in Gemini, bringing in a little bit of that love energy and that creative energy within the voice and within the writing and the speaking and the talking and the sharing, and which is very important because of a lot of the other things going on. So that kind of can help some of the communication that's going on with Venus and Gemini. Again, Neptune is still trining now. It's trining Mars also, and Mercury and the nodes, and it's squaring Jupiter, and is sextiling Saturn and South Node and Pluto. So Neptune is a big player all the way through June, and it goes even farther than that. These aspects will be very strong, and in some incidences a little Neptunian. So that's why I kind of emphasize, the manifestation, and meditate on it, but to manifest the peace, manifest this opposition, the cardinal T-square with Eris, manifest that it go with ease and grace, and that it calm down a little bit so that we can get more work done. But then again, maybe if it gets too calm, we won't take the action, which is why Mars has come in here. So when you try to figure out, what does this all mean? It's almost like I said, the universe is serious. Changes need to be made now. We need to make choices. We need to let go of stuff that isn't vibrating or vibrating. People, places, and things, I like to say a lot, through the government, also in all the different countries. And, and when it comes to people, especially, it doesn't have to be done mean or anything. You can gravitate away from somebody that isn't vibrating where you're vibrating, and you can do it in a nice way. You can do it. I have a friend I've done it with because her energy has been so negative. She's kind of caught up in a little negative thing, like why me? And I can't be with her all the time, but I'll talk to her on the phone, and we go out to eat on her birthday, and that's about it. This has been going on for about 3 years or so, but I just can't be with her all the time. So it's not like you have to be mean or burn bridges, but the more we can keep our energy up, the more that other people will keep their energy up, countries will keep their energies up, etc. at some point, this has got to shift over into what the universe is really wanting. And at this particular time, North Node in Cancer is that nurturing with humanity and everybody treating each other like we're a big family. You don't get along with everyone in your family, but if something happens, your family's there for you. That's the way to look at this. Now I know that isn't true in life all the way, but that's kind of like what the universe is indicating here, I believe. And and part of it is we do have to take the CEOs and the leaders and the father figures and bring them into where they can do their job while looking at the good for everybody and not just like power or thinking in a straight, very, which Capricorn on the gray side can be very, this is the way it looks on paper and this is how we have to do it, and detach emotionally and carry on. We need to bring in a little bit of that emotion because there needs to be a little bit of caring in corporates with CEOs and in all of our structures and governments and etc. And Capricorn has kind of a hard time there, even though Capricorn is the one sign that can take the high spiritual, bring it down and ground it, and actually be able to use it because of the goat and the fishtail in Capricorn. Not to beat up on Capricorn, I'm a double Capricorn. I'm a new moon, a Psalmic moon baby, and but the ability to detach and not look at what is really happening also can be. Neptune up there again in that 10th house, delusions and fantasy kind of thing that actually can be accented and expanded by Jupiter. It is also kind of up there going, you can either use the high spiritual or you can use escapism. And so individually, what are we doing there as countries and as etc. What are they doing, or what are they hiding? Are they in reality, or are they not in reality? There's a real reality check with this Neptune in Pisces aspect that's going to be lasting here for quite a while. I think this is a powerful new moon, or excuse me, full moon. The sun's in the first house. The moon is in the 7th house. And again, when we have planets in the 7th house like this, and if we're looking at humanity's chart and we're looking at like governments, worldwide, etc., internationally with that Sag there, that 7th house is open enemies. Kind of like the president here going over to Ireland and England and everywhere that he's been this past week. Not that they're total enemies, but you don't know. And he's gone to countries that, of course, there's North Korea and China that we are kind of like, it's an open enemy. They're really kind of an enemy, but we get along with them. We have these meetings with them, and we try to be friends with them, but they're really an enemy, open enemies. So we have that activation going on in this full moon of the open enemy house, and having Sagittarius in there, which is international. So that was another thing that I had noticed that I thought would need to be looked at. So, any questions on the full moon chart?
Cathy, I noticed in the new moon chart that Mercury was in conjunct Pluto. And in this chart, the Sun has taken the position of Mercury, and it's also in conjunct in the Sun. So this indicates dissatisfaction perhaps with the communications that are going on, and
Yes.
generating crisis and a need for analysis. What do you think?
I think, yeah, exactly what you were saying. Yeah, that in conjunct, and I can see it here in the United States that people are upset with the communication that has been going on over in Europe. It's which, like you said, the inconjunct of Mercury and the inconjunct of the Sun going into Pluto there. It's almost like, Pluto's going, no lies, no secrets, no out of bounds ego. I don't know, what you guys are talking about. You're not doing it right. And hey, there's no secrets. That in conjunct, you can't really totally heal it at that particular moment. And both of them going into Pluto like that, it's like, whatever you guys are chattering about, it's not, no lies, no secrets. And I think that's kind of what that is bringing out. Can you kind of see that?
Yes, Cathy, thank you. Yes, that makes a lot of sense. Yes.
Okay. When I flipped over to the summer solstice, which all of these, the full moon, new moon, summer solstice, most of the aspects are the same. Of course, the moon has changed, and the sun has just gone into Cancer. And remembering that at all the solstices and equinoxes, when the sun moves into the cardinal signs, that opens up a portal again, and that the portals are very, very powerful. Our connections with other star systems, our connections with the universe can activate our DNA and can activate our soul and parts of us that sometimes we haven't, it brings up from the subconscious things. It's a very powerful connection to the universe at all the solstices and the equinoxes. The sun is squaring Chiron, so it's emphasizing the wound of humanity. And it's like saying, take action. It's in Aries, and we got to take action on this. We can't just, we have a wound, kind of, it's like the universe again is getting serious, and we can't just, just let it all pass. And that's kind of what the square from the sun at the summer solstice is saying as it squares into Chiron. And it's time to take action. And hopefully it doesn't have to be, bad action. But we have to take a step. People have to take a step and not just sit back and let things just happen. Again, we're in a phase of radical transformation, and that's what this T-square and the nodes and Pluto and Saturn, which, like I said, is extremely rare to be in Capricorn. And that's what a lot of this means. We can't, it's radical transformation. Can't sit still. Have to make some changes. Have to move forward. Have to take action. No lies, no secrets, no out of bounds ego. Pluto in Capricorn, Saturn in Capricorn there, and Saturn's emphasizing it, making it even more so. So it's a very, very powerful time that we chose to be in, and so the sun coming in and the square in Chiron, another one of the wounds of humanity being activated there. Again, it's in the house of the other, and the open enemies, and maybe shifting the house to okay enemies instead of open enemies. I'm not sure. But being able to get along with them and not have the ultimate goal, of course, is, oneness, and being able to get along with or tolerate everybody, and without any of the craziness that we've been going through for lifetimes, as indicated by Saturn, Pluto conjunct the South Node in Capricorn. And again, this extremely rare combination. And the things history-wise, I gave you one example with the Aztecs. but there were several examples of the same type of thing happening whenever Saturn and Pluto were together in Capricorn. So we have that knowledge now. We can avoid that and make better choices so we can avoid that. So again, at the solstice, we all, in Cancer, we still have the North Node and Mars and Mercury opposing South Node Saturn, Pluto being squared by Eris, and being squared from the 7th, a little bit the 8th, probably the 8th house, or Eris' sun. Jupiter, again squaring Neptune, is opposing Venus at the summer solstice. Which is nice. That Jupiter, the optimism and the joy and the expansion and the fun and the laughing, opposing Venus, creativity and romance and money. So that's a nice aspect of this summer solstice, with the Venus in the 10th house even more so. So that's a nice little reprieve, you might say, from all the kind of tension and the energy of the transits that are going on, the long-term transits. I like that transit up there. Again, it's very similar to the full moon, other than the Jupiter-Venus opposition and the sun moving into Cancer. Of course, the sun moved into cardinal sign, but most of the other planets are out of Cancer. Planets are out of orb for that connection. Any questions on the summer solstice? I want to say something about Saturn and Neptune. So what I kind of see overall with Neptune sextiling Saturn, this is like a year-long sextile, is that I think it can bring some material gain to people and also some spiritual pursuits. With that Neptune Saturn again being about work and making things happen and building a structure, and with Neptune spiritual pursuits is a very good way to channel that energy. And again, that's like a year-long energy, and kind of like dreams come true with hard work. But of course, Saturn can also, with the hard work, bring it into reality. Understanding your limitations while being optimistic is another thing that would come in at that time. Spiritual goals and how they fit into the big picture. These are all things that this aspect can activate within us, and we can use that energy to move forward with helping other people's dreams come true. That's another way to look at that. Saturn-Neptune sextile. And of course with Saturn, that brings in the South Node and the Pluto. But with Neptune, it brings in this other ability of more bringing your spiritual pursuits and your dreams, etc., into reality. Neptune squaring Jupiter, Neptune squaring Jupiter. This can be, it's like taking Neptune, angels and guides and meditation and manifestation and being able to float up here for a while and bringing a square into Jupiter. And Jupiter, very optimistic and higher learning and religions and philosophies. And the problem, I believe there is that you could get lost in what is reality and what is fantasy during that time period. It can help a lot with the spiritual goals that we were talking about, etc. But what is the reality, and how can you bring those dreams and insights, etc., into reality? And there's that things could appear really attractive, and things could appear really joyful, and you can become a little too optimistic. And there's a lot of little things to watch out for with Neptune squaring Jupiter, and also Neptune sextiling Saturn. This whole Neptunian thing that's part of the Solstice the whole year is, that reality check. Making sure that you're still in reality, and you can dream, and you can hope, and you can meditate, and you can talk with your angels, etc. But make sure you're grounded. Make sure you stay into some reality, because it's that the Neptune over this next year, there's that ability to not be grounded enough and not be in reality. It's a time there can also be with the square Jupiter, Neptune squaring Jupiter, there could be a test, kind of. I like to call them pop quizzes. The universe gives you pop quizzes from time to time, and you go, oh yeah, I recognize that. No, I'm not doing that again. I'll call it a pop quiz. But there could be a test or a pop quiz of your faith, your belief system during this time of Saturn squaring Jupiter. Neptune squaring Jupiter, excuse me. So that kind of testing of the belief system of your faith, how you believe, by someone or something, or something embarrassing happens or something along those lines, also could be going on. Also, well, the one lasts a whole year, etc. Very prominent in the eclipses and in these full moons and the solstice. That ability. So something to think about. Some people will be trusting their illusions too much, and relationship-wise, any of the relationships, make sure that you don't have people on a pedestal, or over idolizing someone of a romantic interest. And that could be very, very prominent with these two Neptune aspects going on. And as we all know, when you put someone on a pedestal, eventually they fall off. So that's something to be watching also with this Neptune transit. And okay, I'm just checking the notes here. Anybody have any questions on any of this? Okay, I don't know how much time we have left.
You can have some more time if you need it, but we're towards the end.
I thought so, because I think I've talked about everything, unless anybody has any questions. Mm-hmm. Okay. Oh yeah, one way to look at everything this summer too, with the solstice, and we have the full moon coming up, and of course going into July, the same thing, is everything is happening, and all the nice energies also. It's all happening on the backdrop of that cardinal T-square. It's always in the background. There's always that energy going on. And remember, like I said, the universe is serious. It's a serious time period in humanity's evolution. Radical evolution is kind of what we're going through. The more we understand that and can give a little here and there, or understand why things are happening, and so we can react to them better, the easier it will be for us and everyone we're in contact with to get through all of this. It's the Earth. I will say this: the Earth is receiving a lot of these energies also. And here in the United States, I keep track of Earth things a lot, like tsunamis and earthquakes and stuff like that, because the Earth is alive and the Earth also receives these energies. And I was very interested, a little shocked when I found out that in Peru they had an earthquake, 8 point something. That's a pretty good earthquake. Nowhere in the United States did I hear anything about this earthquake. I heard about it because I subscribe or whatever I get updates from a site, and we have earthquakes all the time because the Earth is receiving this energy, and we're having a hard time, incorporating this energy, and we can kind of understand it through astrology. But the Earth's receiving it all the time, and there are earthquakes galore all the time going on. But this is a big one, 8 point something, and it was never mentioned anywhere. And so I thought to myself, it's going down in the news. It's not, the Earth is reacting, and I think some of that has to do with the climate control arguments, etc., going on here in the United States anyway. That may be why I didn't hear about it on the news in the United States, because there's a lot of argument about the Earth and global warming, etc. But I just found that very interesting that it was never mentioned up here, and I'm glad that I get updates about it because the Earth is receiving this energy also. Okay, any questions on anything? Okay, I think that's about all I had outlined.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Cathy.
Okay.
And we're looking forward to seeing you next time.
Okay.
Thanks
Thank
so
you.
much.